Act 1, Section A. Sarah checked her scanner at 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes until midnight, 13 minutes until the building was officially hers alone. The day shift had cleared out an hour ago. Gary from receiving had waved on his way to the parking lot, keys jingling. "Don't let the place eat you," he'd said, like he said every night. Sarah had smiled like she always did, even though the joke had stopped being funny 3 months ago. Now the warehouse was silent, except for the hum of fluorescent light stretched across the ceiling, like a grid of cold suns. The building was massive, 400,000 square feet of industrial shelving arranged in sections A through Z. Sarah's job was simple: walk every aisle, scan random items, verify the counts match the system, quality control, inventory accuracy. 8 hours, 5 nights a week, alone. She didn't mind the solitude. After the chaos of retail, after the constant customer questions and the suffocating small talk with co-workers, the warehouse felt like permission to exist without performance. Just her, the scanner, and the quiet. Sarah pulled her cart from the charging station. The wheels squeaked against the polished concrete. She put in a maintenance request 3 times. No one had come. The squeak had become part of the rhythm. Scan, beep, squeak, scan, beep, squeak. She started in Section A, like she always did. Row A1, shelf position 1, household cleaners, bottles of bleach, yellow labels, counts of 24 per case. She scanned the barcode. Beep. The scanner screen glowed green. Count verified. 24. She moved to the next shelf. Laundry detergent, blue bottles, 48 per case. Beep. Count verified. 48. The rhythm settled in. Her mind went quiet. This was the good part of the job, the meditative part. No decisions to make, just verify what's already there. Move forward. Don't think. By 12:30 a.m., she'd cleared Section A and moved into Section B. Automotive supplies, motor oil, windshield fluid, air fresheners shaped like trees. The chemical smell was sharper here. It made her eyes water if she stayed too long. She scanned a case of oil filters. Beep. Count verified. 36. Except when she looked at the case, she counted 35. Sarah frowned. Recounted. Definitely 35. She scanned again. Beep. Count verified. 36. The system was wrong. Or she'd miscounted. Probably miscounted. It was late. She'd been staring at products for an hour. Easy to lose track. She made a note on her scanner and moved on. Section C. Electronics. Batteries, chargers, earbuds in plastic clamshells. The shelves here went higher, 15 feet up. Sarah had to use the ladder cart to reach the top shelves. She hated the ladder cart. It wobbled. Every time she climbed it, she imagined falling, imagined her body hitting concrete, imagined lying there for hours before someone found her on the day shift. But she climbed anyway, scanned the top shelf. Rechargeable batteries, AA. Beep. Count verified. 18. She counted. 18. Good. When she climbed down and looked back up, there were 19 packs. Sarah blinked, stared at the shelf, counted again. 19. She just verified 18. She just counted 18. She'd been looking at the shelf for 30 seconds, and now there were 19. Her heart kicked against her ribs. She climbed back up, scanned again. Beep. Count verified. 18. But there were 19 packs on the shelf, right in front of her. She could touch them. She counted them 3 times. 19. The scanner said 18. Sarah climbed down. Her hands were shaking slightly. She looked at the time. 1:14 a.m. 6.5 hours to go. She moved to Section D. Act 2. The pattern. By 2 a.m., Sarah had logged 12 discrepancies. Counts that didn't match. products in the wrong locations, barcodes that scanned but showed items that weren't on the shelf. She'd been doing this job for 3 months and had never seen more than 2 or 3 errors in a full shift. 12 in 2 hours wasn't possible. Not unless someone had been moving things around during the day shift. But why would they? Section E. Home goods, kitchen supplies, storage containers, picture frames. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder here. Or maybe Sarah was just noticing it more. The sound filled her head, a frequency just slightly wrong, like a note played a half-step flat. She scanned a set of drinking glasses. Beep. Count verified. 12. She looked at the shelf. 8 glasses. She rubbed her eyes. Looked again. Still 8. Scanned again. Beep. Count verified. 12. This doesn't make sense, she said aloud. Her voice sounded small in the massive space. The acoustics were wrong. Her words didn't echo. They just stopped. She moved to the next aisle. Row E7. Scanned a box of photo frames. Beep. Count verified. 20. 20 frames on the shelf. Finally, a match. But when she looked closer, one of the frames had a photo in it. That was wrong. The frames came empty. She'd scanned hundreds of them over the past 3 months. Always empty. Sarah picked up the frame. The photo showed a warehouse aisle, industrial shelving, concrete floor, fluorescent lights overhead. It looked like this warehouse. It looked like this exact aisle. And standing in the aisle, small but visible, was a woman in a navy blue uniform holding a scanner. Sarah's uniform was navy blue. She turned the frame over. On the back, written in marker, Section E, Row 7, 2:03 a.m. Sarah checked her watch. 2:03 a.m. She dropped the frame. It clattered against the concrete but didn't break. Her breathing was too loud. Her heart was too fast. She backed away from the shelf, turned, started walking toward the main aisle. She needed to get back to the desk. She needed to call someone, her supervisor, security, someone. But when she reached the end of row E7 and turned left, she wasn't in the main aisle. She was in row E14. Sarah stopped. That wasn't possible. Row E7 connected directly to the main aisle. There was no row E14 in between. The rows were numbered sequentially. E7, then the aisle, then E8 on the other side. She turned around, walked back the way she came. Row E7 was gone. Now she was looking at row E21. No, Sarah said. No, no, no. She walked faster, past E21, past E28, past E35. The section didn't have 35 rows. Section E had 12 rows. 12 rows, then you reach Section F, but the rows kept going. E42, E57, E63. And the products were changing. The kitchen supplies were gone. Now the shelves held things Sarah recognized. Personal things. A coffee mug, blue ceramic with a chip on the handle. Sarah stopped. She knew that mug. She'd bought it at a thrift store 2 years ago. It was in her apartment, in her kitchen cabinet. But here it was, on a warehouse shelf. Barcode sticker on the bottom. She scanned it. Beep. Item. Personal effect. Quantity. 1. Location. Your apartment. Kitchen cabinet. Second shelf. Sarah stared at the screen. Her apartment. Her cabinet. How did the system know that? She looked at the next shelf. A book. The Ocean at the End of the Lane. Sarah's copy. The one she'd been reading before bed. She was on page 147. She pulled it from the shelf, opened it. Page 147 was dog-eared. Next shelf, a framed photo. Sarah and her sister at the beach, 3 summers ago. The frame had been on her dresser this morning. Next shelf, her keys, her car keys, the ones she'd used to drive here tonight, the ones that should be in her jacket pocket. She checked her pocket. They were there, except they were also here, on the shelf. Sarah's hands were shaking. She scanned the keys. Beep. Item. Car keys. Status. Duplicate. Origin. Unknown. She kept walking. The shelves kept showing her belongings. Her jacket, her phone charger, her favorite pen, a necklace her mother had given her. And then she understood. The items weren't random. They were in order. Chronological order. The mug, she'd bought it 2 years ago. The book, she'd started reading it 2 months ago. The photo, 3 years old. The necklace, a gift from 15 years ago. The shelves were showing her life, piece by piece, object by object. But why? Sarah moved faster now, not running, walking with purpose, following the trail of her own belongings like breadcrumbs. The rows kept going. The section markers changed, but she stopped paying attention to them. She was following the timeline now. More recent items, things from last year, last month, last week. A grocery receipt from 10 days ago. A coffee cup from the shop she'd stopped at on her way to work yesterday. The note she'd written to herself 3 days ago. Remember to call Mom. She hadn't called. Sarah's chest felt tight. Each item was a small failure, a small neglect, a small piece of a life she wasn't really living. And then the shelves changed again. The items here were different, heavier, more significant. A rejection letter from the job she'd applied for 8 months ago, the job she'd really wanted, the one that would have gotten her out of retail into something real. She'd gotten the letter and hadn't told anyone, just folded it up and put it in a drawer. Here it was, on a shelf, barcode attached, next shelf, an eviction notice from her last apartment 2 years ago. She'd been late on rent too many times. The landlord had given her 30 days. She'd packed up and moved without saying goodbye to her neighbors, without explaining to anyone, just disappeared. Next shelf, her sister's number in her phone contacts, 17 missed calls. Sarah had stopped answering 6 months ago. Too tired, too ashamed, too nothing. Next shelf, prescription bottles. Antidepressants she'd stopped taking because she felt numb. Anxiety medication she'd skipped because it made her tired. Each item was a choice. Each item was a moment she'd given up, checked out, stopped trying. Sarah's breathing was shallow. She wanted to stop looking, wanted to turn around, go back to Section A where things made sense, but she kept walking. Because now she understood what the warehouse was showing her. It wasn't trapping her, it was inventorying her. Act 3. The timeline. The sections blurred together now. Sarah didn't know if she was in F or M or T. The letters didn't matter. Only the timeline mattered. The shelves showed her childhood. A stuffed bear, faded brown fur, one eye missing. Sarah picked it up. She'd lost this when she was 7. Moving day, her parents' divorce. She'd left it in the old house by accident and cried for a week. She scanned it. Beep. Item. Stuffed bear. Origin. 1998. Status. Lost. Next shelf. A report card from 4th grade. Sarah pulled it down. All B's except for 1 C in math. Her father had been disappointed. She remembered his face across the dinner table, the way he'd set the paper down without saying anything, the silence worse than anger. She scanned it. Beep. Item. Report card. Origin. 2001. Status. Insufficient. Next shelf. A photo. Her father, younger, smiling, holding her on his shoulders at the beach, before the divorce, before he moved to Portland, before the calls stopped coming. She scanned it. Beep. Item. Photograph. Origin. 1997. Status. Archived. The shelves shifted. Teenage years now. A diary. Purple cover. Tiny lock she'd lost the key to. She'd kept it for 6 months in 8th grade. Filled it with complaints about her mother, about school, about feeling invisible. Then she'd stopped writing, gave up, like she always did. She scanned it. Beep. Item. Diary. Origin. 2005. Status. Abandoned. Next shelf. A letter. Folded notebook paper. Careful handwriting. From Jake, her first boyfriend, junior year. He'd written it after their first date, slipped it into her locker. She'd kept it in her backpack for months, reading it over and over. They'd dated for 6 weeks. Then he'd moved on. She never threw the letter away. She scanned it. Beep. Item. Letter. Origin. 2008. Status. Obsolete. Next shelf. A college rejection letter. From the school she'd actually wanted to attend. The one her guidance counselor said was a reach. She'd applied anyway. The thin envelope had arrived in April. She'd opened it alone in her room, never told anyone she'd applied, never told anyone she'd been rejected. She scanned it. Beep. Item. Rejection letter. Origin. 2010. Status. Expected. Sarah's hands were shaking now. Each item was a small wound. Each scan made it fresh again. The shelves shifted again. Her 20s. Job applications. Dozens of them. Printed on resume paper she'd bought at Staples. Most of them never sent. The ones she did send mostly ignored. A few interviews that went nowhere. Each rejection teaching her that maybe she wasn't meant for anything better. She scanned a stack of them. Beep. Item. Job applications. Origin. 2014 to 2019. Status. Declined. Next shelf. Apartment leases. 5 different addresses in 8 years. Each one cheaper than the last. Each move after being late on rent. After giving up on making it work. After deciding it was easier to disappear than explain. She scanned them. Beep. Item. Leases. Origin. 2012 to 2020. Status. Terminated. Next shelf. A phone. Old model. Cracked screen. Her phone from 3 years ago. She'd replaced it but kept the old one in a drawer. Never transferred the photos. Never looked at the messages. Too many reminders of people she'd stopped talking to. She picked it up. Turned it on. The battery was somehow charged. Text messages from her sister. 37 unread. Hey, just checking in. Mom's worried about you. Are you okay? Please call me back. I don't know what I did wrong. I miss you. The last one was from 6 months ago. I hope you're okay. I love you. Sarah had never responded. Too ashamed to admit she was drowning. Too tired to pretend she was fine. She scanned the phone. Beep. Item. Phone. Origin. 2020. Status. Disconnected. Next shelf. Prescription bottles. 3 of them. Orange plastic. White labels. Sertraline. Lorazepam. She'd taken them for 8 months. They'd helped. Made the edges softer. Made the days manageable. Then she'd stopped. Told herself she didn't need them. Told herself she was fine. Really, she just felt numb. Felt like the medication was keeping her from feeling anything, even if what she felt without it was mostly pain. She scanned them. Beep. Item. Medications. Origin. 2022. Status. Discontinued. Each item was a choice. Each item was a moment she'd given up. Checked out. Stopped trying. Sarah's breathing was shallow, her chest tight. The shelves kept going. More recent now. Last year, last month, last week. A grocery receipt from 10 days ago. Frozen meals for 1. She'd stopped cooking, stopped trying. It was easier to eat standing at the counter than to sit at a table alone. Her coffee cup from the shop she'd stopped at yesterday morning. The barista had smiled and asked how her day was going. Sarah had said, fine, and left before the woman could ask anything else. The note she'd written to herself 3 days ago. Remember to call Mom. She hadn't called. Sarah's legs felt weak. She leaned against the shelf. The items here were heavy, more significant. A rejection letter from the job she'd applied for 8 months ago. Marketing coordinator at a startup. Good pay, creative work, a chance to do something that mattered. She'd made it to the final interview. They'd asked about her goals, her vision for the role. She'd answered honestly, passionately. For the first time in years, she'd felt like herself. The rejection email came 3 days later. We've decided to move forward with another candidate. She'd read it at work, in the break room at the retail job she hated. She'd folded up the printed copy and put it in her bag. Never told anyone she'd applied. Never told anyone she'd failed. Next shelf, an eviction notice from her last apartment 2 years ago. She'd been late on rent 3 times. The landlord had been understanding at first, then frustrated, then done. 30 days to vacate. She'd packed everything into a car, didn't tell her neighbors where she was going, didn't leave a forwarding address, just disappeared one weekend while everyone was at work. Found a cheaper place across town, smaller, darker, quieter. Next shelf, her sister's contact card, printed from her phone. 17 missed calls logged beneath the name. Rebecca, her younger sister, the one who'd gotten married last year, the one who'd called to tell Sarah she was pregnant, the one who'd invited Sarah to the baby shower. Sarah had said she'd try to make it, then didn't show up, didn't call to explain, just didn't. Rebecca had called 6 times that week. Sarah had let them all go to voicemail. Eventually, Rebecca stopped trying. Sarah picked up the contact card, stared at her sister's smiling photo. She scanned it. Beep. Item. Contact. Origin. Ongoing. Status. Severed. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The sound was constant now, filling her skull. She moved through the last shelves. The items got more recent, more painful. The week before she'd taken this job. A stack of bills, unopened, red envelopes, final notices. She'd known what they said. Opening them wouldn't change anything. So she'd left them on the counter, ignored them, hoped they'd disappear. A voicemail notification from her mother. Sarah had deleted it without listening. She couldn't handle the concern in her mother's voice, the worry, the disappointment. A calendar, every day blank, no plans, no obligations, no reason to mark anything down. The day before she'd taken this job, the clothes she'd worn to the interview, black slacks, white blouse, borrowed from a neighbor she barely knew. She'd practiced smiling in the mirror, practiced saying, "I'm very interested in this opportunity." The truth was she'd applied because she was desperate, because retail was killing her slowly, because she needed something, anything, different. When they'd offered her the night shift, she'd said yes immediately, alone in a warehouse, no customers, no co-workers, no expectations. It had sounded perfect. The day she'd started, her employee badge, her uniform, her scanner. She picked up the scanner. It looked identical to the one in her hand. She scanned it. Beep. Item. Scanner. Origin. Day 1. Status. Permanent. And then she reached Section K. Act 4. Section K. Section K was different. The shelves here were empty, no products, no items, just bare metal stretching into darkness, except for one row, row 8. Sarah walked slowly down the aisle. Her footsteps echoed, or didn't echo. She couldn't tell anymore. At the center of row 8, there was a single shelf with a single item, a mirror, full length, unframed, leaning against the shelf like someone had just set it down. Sarah stood in front of it. Her reflection looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy bun. navy blue uniform wrinkled from hours of walking. She looked like someone who'd given up, and behind her reflection in the mirror, she saw the warehouse, the endless rows, the fluorescent lights, the concrete floor. But there was something else. Other figures, dozens of them, standing in the rows behind her, all wearing navy blue uniforms, all holding scanners, all staring at her. Sarah spun around. The rows were empty, no one there. She looked back at the mirror. The figures were still there, watching, waiting, and then one of them moved, stepped forward, walked until it was standing right behind Sarah's reflection. Sarah couldn't turn around, couldn't move, could only watch in the mirror as the figure raised its scanner and scanned her. Beep. The sound came from behind her, but there was no one behind her. Beep. Closer. Beep. The figure in the mirror was scanning Sarah's reflection, and Sarah felt it, felt the red laser line moving across her back, across her shoulders, down her arms. Item detected. The words appeared on the figure's scanner. Sarah could see them in the mirror. Item, Sarah Mitchell. Category, inventory. Status, incomplete. Sarah's own scanner buzzed in her hand. She looked down at the screen. New task, complete inventory. Location, section K, row 8. Item, yourself. She looked back up at the mirror. The figures were gone. Just her reflection now, tired, alone, holding a scanner. Sarah understood now. She'd been running from her life, from decisions, from connections, from the messiness of being a person in the world. The warehouse had given her what she wanted, a place to disappear, a place where she didn't have to be anything except a function. Scan, beep, verify. No expectations, no disappointments, no pain. But she'd become inventory herself, catalogued, filed, stored, no longer a person, just an item on a shelf. Sarah looked at her scanner, at the task still glowing on the screen. Complete inventory. She could walk away, put down the scanner, try to find the exit, try to go back to her life, messy as it was. Or she could finish the job. She rolled up her sleeve. On the inside of her wrist, there was a barcode. She didn't remember it being there, but it had always been there, hadn't it? Sarah raised her scanner, aimed it at her wrist. Her hand was shaking. She thought about her sister, the 17 missed calls, the apology she'd never made. She thought about her mother, the note she'd written. Remember to call Mom. The call she'd never made. She thought about the person she'd been before she started disappearing, before she chose emptiness over pain. She could still choose differently. She could put down the scanner, walk away, face whatever she'd been running from, but her finger was already on the trigger. Beep. The scanner read her barcode. The screen lit up. Item, Sarah Mitchell. Status, inventory, complete. Location, section K, row 8. Final disposition, archived. The screen went dark. The lights went out. Sarah stood in absolute darkness. She couldn't see the mirror, couldn't see the shelves, couldn't see her own hand in front of her face, but she could hear something. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Cartwheels on concrete, getting closer. Someone else was here. Someone else starting their shift. Sarah tried to speak, tried to call out, tried to warn them, but she had no voice, no breath, no body. She was inventory now, filed away in section K, row 8. Just another item on a shelf in an infinite warehouse, and the new worker would find her belongings soon, would follow the timeline, would reach the mirror, would scan themselves, because that's what the warehouse did. It gave you what you asked for, a place to disappear, a place to stop trying, until you weren't trying at all, until you were just another item to be counted, forever. Act 5. Inventory. The lights came back on. Sarah was standing in section A, row 1. Household cleaners, bottles of bleach, Her scanner was in her hand, her cart beside her. She checked the time, 11:47 p.m. She checked the date, December 1st. The shift was starting again. Sarah looked at her wrist. The barcode was still there, faint but visible. She was inventory now, but she was also still working, still scanning, still counting, because the warehouse didn't let you rest, didn't let you stop. Once you were catalogued, you became part of the system, forever verifying, forever counting. She scanned the first item on the shelf. Beep. Count verified. 24. Moved to the next shelf. Beep. Count verified. 48. The rhythm settled in. Her mind went quiet. She'd been doing this for 3 months, or 3 years, or forever. Time didn't work right in the warehouse anymore, but she knew the route now. Section A through Z, row 1 through infinity, and eventually she'd reach section K again, row 8. The mirror, and another worker would be standing there, looking at their own reflection, seeing the figures in the rows behind them, and Sarah would be one of those figures, watching, waiting, holding her scanner, ready to complete the inventory, because that's what the warehouse did. It turned people into process, life into items, choices into barcodes, and once you scanned yourself, there was no going back. You were archived, filed, stored. Sarah pushed her cart forward. The wheels squeaked against the concrete. She put in a maintenance request 3 times. No one had come. The squeak had become part of the rhythm. Scan, beep, squeak, scan, beep, squeak. She passed through section B, section C, section D. In section E, she found new items on the shelves, items that didn't belong to her. A different coffee mug, a different book, someone else's keys. A new timeline was starting, a new person's belongings being catalogued. They'd taken the job recently. They were probably working right now, walking through the sections, starting to notice that things were wrong. Sarah kept scanning, kept moving. She'd reach section K eventually, in a few hours, or a few days, or a few years. And when she did, she'd be there in the mirror, behind the new worker's reflection, one of the figures watching from the rows, and she'd raise her scanner, and she'd help complete the inventory, because that's what the warehouse did. It kept counting, it kept verifying, it never stopped. And neither did Sarah. She scanned another item, beep, count verified, another, beep, count verified. The rhythm was perfect now, mechanical, inevitable. Scan, beep, squeak, scan, beep, squeak, forever. In the distance, somewhere deep in the infinite rows, she heard another scanner. Beep. Someone else was counting too. Someone else had completed their inventory. Someone else had become part of the warehouse, and they'd keep scanning together, all of them, forever, because the inventory was never complete, but they'd keep counting, they'd keep verifying, they'd keep working, until there was nothing left of them but the rhythm. Scan, beep, squeak, scan, beep, squeak, forever.